yeah, intent plus freedom from outcome is interesting. Remember that phrase that I said for how to pull, right? Where you go somewhere lovely, but that you'll love. If you don't, you can go home. And either way, I'm having a good time. Again, from the very beginning, from the first moment you talk to a girl, you should have that phrase as your persona, right? From hi, your hello is, we're gonna have a lovely experience, you're gonna enjoy it. If at any time you don't enjoy it, you can leave, and I'm gonna have a good time. That's the vibe you wanna have. If you have that frame, if you have that idea in your head, everything is going to come out of it well. Now, guys fall into like a couple different categories though. Some guys are the guy who doesn't escalate, all right? The guy who doesn't escalate, and typically the guy who doesn't escalate, it's because he's afraid to. Because he's afraid to escalate. Because like, okay, when I was 18, I'd kissed one girl in my life, and that was forced on me. I was basically mouth raped. So, no joke. It was very traumatic. It was just the story of my first kiss briefly. Sure, why not? So I was riding a bus with this girl. I was in 9th grade, she was in 8th grade. And one day, I barely even spoken to her. It was weird. Like, that was the whole history of me growing up was all the girls that I knew didn't want to date me, but all these other girls that saw me like from far away wanted to date me because I was good academically, good at sports, like doing my own thing. So when I was on my path and not trying to get them to like me, they liked me. But then if I actually like interacted with them, just didn't like me anymore. So anyway, this girl rode the bus with me for like 6 months and like developed a crush on me somehow. So one day, as she's getting off the bus, she hands me this piece of paper that says like, would you like to go out, and like check yes or no, right? So she hands it to me and runs off the bus as fast as possible. And so I get it, I read it, and like she's like gone by the time I have it. I'm like, all right, what am I supposed to do with this? And then she calls me up later that night and says, hey, did you get my note? I'm like, yeah, you handed it to me, so yeah. Delivery successful. And she's like, what did you think? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, well, I'm like, I guess we could try. She's like, okay, sure. So then like the next day, I'm like all like sort of nervous, excited, because I've never had a girlfriend before, right? So I wore, instead of my jeans, I wore khakis, and I wore like a collared shirt instead of my t-shirt. I dressed up for my girlfriend. And we get on the bus, and my stop was first. I'm sitting there waiting on the bus, wondering what's gonna happen. And she comes over and literally like, comes and sits down with me, doesn't even say a word, grabs my hand, puts both our hands on my dick, and like basically shoves her tongue down my throat. I'm like, what the fuck, where did that come from? That was pretty fast. Yeah, and I don't know, I was pretty nervous about the whole thing and sexually inexperienced, and it didn't work out very well. But anyway, that was like the one kiss I'd had. So I'd never escalated on a girl, and I didn't think you could. So I was super nervous. In fact, there was a period where when I would try and like get physical with a girl, like I would like touch a girl's arm like that, like not literally quite like that, but just like touch the girl. And I thought that like I was conveying positive masculine sexual energy, as conveying that I was willing to touch a girl. And that was my big move, was like, right? Like they'd be telling a story like, oh, that must have been really like tough for you, or oh, that's really cool, right? That was my sexuality. So that's the place where I was coming from. And a lot of guys are there. A lot of guys are there because they don't want to offend. They don't want to like turn a girl off. They don't want to get a girl angry at them. They don't want to create a scene. And so they just don't escalate enough. They don't show enough intent, okay? And then what happens is that they start to show some intent. And what'll typically happen is that they'll start to get more success, but also more negative reactions. And why is that? So they're going to get more success because they're actually giving themselves a chance to succeed. When you're not actually getting physical with a girl, you never give yourself a chance. Once you start getting physical, certain girls that like you will respond well to it, will reciprocate, and things will go well. However, you're making yourself a sexual threat. So you're going to start to get negative, negative feedback as well. Because you're a sexual threat, but you're not like the super cool guy that they're chasing, okay? And funny enough, what will happen typically is people are very serious about showing that intent, and so they'll be in like serious intentful mode when they're showing, and they'll be even like a little bit creepy. So it'll turn a lot of girls off, but they'll start to get some positive reactions. And then when guys get a little bit better, they'll start to, the sexuality will become more natural, become more chill and more smooth, and the girls will be more receptive. And then the guys also start to have fun with it. And that's when you have that sort of freedom from outcome with the intent. Okay? And it's having fun with the intent. And the funny thing is a lot of guys could have fun before they had the intent, right? They could just joke around and have fun, and they seem kind of like outcome free, but what they really are is they're just like pathetic pussies without a penis. right? Honestly, but they look like the outcome-free guys. Like a lot of guys, what they're trying to do by not getting physical is they're trying to appear outcome-free. You understand that? When really they're the most outcome-dependent people ever. It's like, oh my God, I can't do anything. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. But they just joke around, don't get physical, trying to be outcome-free. But what you want to be doing when you get to an advanced high level with intent and with freedom from outcome is you want to be being very intentful, but not intentful with an objective. Okay, you don't want to be intentful to get the girl, or intentful to sleep with a girl, or intentful to tick check boxes. You don't want to be thinking of game as this process of first I hold her hand, then I hug her, then I make out with her, then I go to second base, third base. You know, you don't want to be thinking like that. Don't think of it as like a series of like metrics you have to hit. Think of it as an experience that you have with the girl. And when that's in place, that's when you can have that intent and still have that freedom from outcome. Because you do have an outcome, but your outcome isn't an outcome where the girl loses. Your outcome is we have as much fun as possible, right? That should be the true outcome, right? And you don't want to be outcome free. If you're outcome free, you have no motivation, right? You have no motivation. I'll tell you guys like a really weird parable. Like it's a very, very esoteric lecture it's becoming, but that's okay. Actually, who here is anybody here in computer science and knows the parable of Burden's donkey? Is anybody familiar with this?
I know it because you said it in a video.
I said it on a video one time. Awesome, I like this guy. My only fan, the only guy who watches my videos. Okay, so Burden's donkey goes like this. This is a really like dumb philosophical like little paradox, but it's actually really important for computers. And it's also important for understanding people a little bit. Paradox goes like this. There's a donkey standing. On one side is a huge tub of water. On the other side is a huge like bucket of oats. And it's sitting there and it thinks to itself, you know, I'm thirsty, I'll have some water. And it starts to lean over and thinks, no, actually, I'm more hungry. So it starts to lean over and it's like, no, I'm more thirsty, more hungry, more thirsty. And eventually it goes back and forth and doesn't eat and doesn't drink until it dies of hunger and thirst. Okay? Now that's retarded because it would never happen. No donkey would ever do that. No human being would ever do that. But a computer will do that. A computer will do that. If a computer is programmed in such a way that two options are equally good, and it doesn't have like some sort of you must make a decision this time, or you must randomize if it's equal or something like that, if it doesn't have something like that in the programming, it will just sit there and do nothing. Okay? That's what would happen if you had no intent. That's what game without intent would be. It would be inaction. Okay? So and that's what game without any outcome dependence would be also. Okay? It would be inaction. So you don't actually want to be outcome free. If you were totally outcome free, if you totally didn't care, you just sit there and like ignore the girl. That's not good game. You don't want freedom from outcome. What you want is to change your outcome. You want to change your outcome to one that's positive and like moves the set forward in a good way. One that is a win for her and a win for you. So the outcome you have is you and her having a good experience together. Not her ending up as like a notch on your bedpost. That's the outcome that turns girls off. Okay? So you can have all the intent in the world if you have that. Another idea along those lines is the idea Jeff has of what he calls boners, not kino. You guys may have heard this, right? It says when you're touching a girl, you don't want to be like I was at 18, being like, I'm being sexual, right? What you want to do is sexual things that turn you on, right? Ideally, if you're touching a girl, you should be getting aroused by it, and she should be getting aroused by it. Jeff has this philosophy, he says, I get hard in every set. Right? Even if like you watch him like narrate his footage, he'll be like normally goes hit, and like he's like that's the sound of me getting hard. It's pretty funny, but the point is he is, right? And that's actually very powerful because he's no longer once he's actually like erect penis in set, he's not thinking like I view this girl as an accomplishment. I view this girl as something for my ego. He's saying I view this girl as a positive sexual experience, and that's how you should be viewing it. That's the outcome you should have. Does that make sense? So if your outcome is positive sexual experience, then you don't have to be outcome free. But if your outcome is, I want to manipulate this girl into sleeping with me even though she shouldn't because I am a little shit, right? In that case, yeah, that outcome is a very fucking creepy outcome and it's not going to work for you, right? And then you can't be intentful. Then you have to be that guy that can't touch the girl because if you're touching the girl and being creepy, then you get like fucking rape charges, okay? So you don't want that. Okay, so that's sort of like intent and freedom from outcome. You want to make sure that you do have an outcome in mind, but that it's a good outcome. And then secondly, that you're not super attached to it. The second part is, if it does go badly, you need to know that there is abundance. You need to know that there are other girls in the world, and that if you don't get this one, it's not the end of the world. Okay? So that's sort of the idea of those two combined.